Morning. Okay, where are we? Where are we? Okay, here we are here. We are here. Okay. Okay.
Hi, Margarita.
Hello, Oksana.
So glad to see you. I've heard so much about you from Veronika Alexanic, from Ina Barush. And you were
Well,
the first candidate who they named when I asked for advice who to invite, who would be a
well,
great speaker. So yeah.
we'll see. I am very thankful for this opportunity and very, very glad to connect through this. Um, I think it's going to be a challenge because it's the first time that I talk about this topic. So
Oh,
I hope that the critics will not be very bad, not very
no.
violent. Я теж хочу сказати, що я буду трошки пару слів сказати українською спочатку, а потім ми можемо вже англійською, тому що для мене може бути ці технічні питання українською, може бути не настільки гарна. Але коли буду question and answer, іноді це краще, коли люди спочатку українською обговорюють питання чи зауваження, потім може бути переклад чи ні. Я впевнена, що коли я буду відповідати, треба буде прикласти, але просто щоб люди знали, що я майже усе розумію, і іноді є речі, які краще зрозуміти українською, і потім може бути ще раз англійською, але спочатку українською.
All right. Дякую. We've just had another lecture before yours, and there were some technical issues like we have two channels, the Ukrainian one for the translator and the English one where you and I stay. And well, it was the other speaker and I, but at the end, when people started posing questions, we somehow lost the connection and had to move to this in chat, I mean all of us. So if we have a problem like that, so I will tell you what to press and what to do in order for us to be in one and the same chat and one and the same sound channel. Well,
you're currently muted.
Yeah, you're muted, Margarita. You have turned off your sound. Could you please?
How does it work when you have these two channels? What do I have to pay attention to when you have two channels?
Look, there are three dots in the right corner.
More.
On the bottom, yeah, more.
Yes.
So we press more, and there is the option like interpreting.
I don't see that. I only see record.
Yeah, because I will right now I will turn it on because I wanted Lisa to stay with us in the same chat. Now I'll add her. Doesn't that work?
Well, I don't know.
Well, Lisa, it already says you as the interpreter, actually.
I don't have the panel yet.
Great. Oh, not again. Because it recognizes you as the interpreter and doesn't allow me to add you once more.
Can I maybe leave and then join you once again? Maybe this will help.
Oh,
let's do that.
No, stop. It says you can't, Just a second. It just doesn't recognize your name anymore, but it writes that you are English
right.
interpreter.
Okay. Sorry about that. I renamed.
Oh, you renamed. I see. Okay. Do you have the panel now? Okay. Margarita, could you please turn the sound on? I can't hear you. Okay. Thank you. Now you can press.
I have only chat and record on this computer and captions.
Wow.
But I mean, these are the three dots that say more. Yes.
Yeah, three dots that say more.
But there's something that says interpretation on the bottom.
Yeah, and you press these three dots, and there is an option like interpret.
interpretation is here. They said,
interpreting, yeah.
I want English or Ukrainian. Okay.
Yeah, and we can switch on either to Ukrainian or to English, but as for now, you and I will stay in English variant on the English channel, and the participants, unless I will be
Yes.
Will be there.
I
Will
can.
be. Well, but if you wanted to start in Ukrainian,
I can.
so we have
But I cannot
to.
hear Oksana.
You can hear me?
Oksana, no. Interpreter, yes.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Трошки.
Oh, that's strange. The previous time we could not hear Leslie at the end, but could hear me.
Well, I can hear if I put it very high, but then the other people will be really.
I see. Okay, I'll try to do something. What about now?
Yes, but it's very loud. Yeah, okay, I will.
I don't know why. I can hear the echo. Did you turn on any other instrument or any other gadget, maybe the phone? No?
I will turn off the phone.
And if
not
you're
that
not
bad.
in Zoom from your phone, it's fine. I can hear you now and I can hear the echo, but you can still hear me, right?
Yes. But I want to know how I hear the other people, because there was a big difference in the level of your sound.
I see. But to hear the other people, we have to move to Ukrainian channel as for now. And you can start speaking there. I mean, introduce yourself in Ukrainian as you wanted before. And then you and I will come back to the English channel thing.
Okay, so I'm a little bit confused now. Now, when I go to what channel should I start on?
Let's start with the Ukrainian channel.
Okay, and then when should I change to the English channel?
I'll let you know.
And then we should also practice. We should also check whether I can show my presentation.
Let's do it now. Yeah, let's do it. Let's check it now.
More, share screen.
Yeah.
Is this gonna work? Screen sharing, but I need to go to the beginning. Slideshow. From the beginning. Okay.
Great.
Okay, and now I'm gonna stop sharing. Okay, and then I don't know what will happen.
Okay, I guess we'll understand what's going on, so we'll understand it, and I will help you if there is anything. Okay, дорогі учасники, а ви нас зараз чуєте? І мене, і Маргариту?
Дуже прекрасно.
Чуємо.
Super. Okay, so Margarita, you wanted to introduce yourself in Ukrainian, so I give the floor to you.
Дуже рада з вами сьогодні спілкуватися. Мене звати Маргарита Балмаседа. Я вже декілька разів працювала в Україні. І я отримала фулбрайтську стипендію, щоб повертатися до України в 22-му році. На жаль, я не змогла це зробити. І як виявилось, ця ситуація відкрила для мене нові можливості. Це не гарно, що я не змогла доїхати до України. Ми знаємо чому, тому що Російська Федерація воює проти України. Але нові можливості, які відкрились для мене через можливості зробити цей фулбрайт в іншому інституту у Німеччині, це усе пов'язано з новим проєктом, про який я буду сьогодні говорити, розмовляти. І я буду англійською говорити, але коли буде question and answer, якщо будуть якісь там зауваження, питання, я дуже рада слухати ваші зауваження українською, потім може бути переклад теж, але я відкрита для ваших коментарів, зауважень і для спілкування сьогодні і в майбутньому. Дякую.
Дякую, Маргарита. У вас чудова українська, ми не могли це не помітити і не прокоментувати. Окей, я хочу ще раз Маргарита, і тих, хто не знає, нагадати, що ми дякуємо за цей проект і можливість його реалізувати посольству США в Україні. Окей, тепер ми з Маргаритою let's leave this channel and move to the English version.
Okay. I am now in English channel.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
All right, so you can start, I guess, and Lisa will interpret the lecture.
Yes, so I don't need to make any pauses. I just talk all the time. Or
well, you can just talk a bit slower, but this is synchronic translation, so
okay.
You will work in parallel.
Okay, I hope so. And first I will share my screen. Okay, let's see where my screen is. Okay, very good. Is it working? Yes.
Yeah.
Good evening, and thank you for being open to having this presentation and this discussion so late in the evening. Thank you. I am very happy to share with you some of the new things I am working on, because this is an opportunity for me to bring together some of my new research with my very long commitment, engagement, and love for Ukraine. So this is the first time I present on this topic. Please be kind. Please don't kill me. It will not be perfect. It is far from perfect, but I want this to be an opportunity for discussion. And I also want to use this as an opportunity to tell you about some of the work I am doing with some institutes in Germany that are very engaged with Ukraine, that want to be engaged with Ukraine. And I want to use some minutes at the end of my presentation to tell you about several very good sponsorship, financial support, and fellowships opportunities in this institute in Germany. So, okay, I have to make sure that I know how to do this. 1 second. How do I move down my screen? So, just excuse me for the technical problems.
Oh, we always do have technical problems.
Yes, but how do I move down the screen? I'm just having a problem here. 1 second.
You have just to turn the pages on your computer or on your laptop. So if you want to change the slide, do it on your laptop.
Okay, yes, okay, apparently it worked. So I just wanted to tell you very briefly about my background. The most important thing is that I have been working for many years on Soviet and post-Soviet fossil fuels. And part of this work was in Ukraine. And I have written several books on this topic. I wrote a book basically about energy corruption, including energy corruption in Ukraine. I wrote a book comparing the energy policies in Ukraine, in Belarus, and Lithuania. I wrote a book about energy and politics and oil refining in Belarus. And my last book was an attempt to do an supply chain analysis of the politics of how 3 molecules of energy traveled from Siberia to Germany via Ukraine. So a lot of fossil fuels. And I was expecting to continue this work in 2022. I was going to continue some of this work. Some of this book dealt with the connections between coal and steel in Ukraine, in Mariupol. So I was going to continue this work with my Fulbright fellowship. I was going to write a book about 3 different steel technologies used in Ukraine and how they related to politics and foreign policy. And I was going to go to the Kiev Mohylanska Academia, but Russia, the Russian Federation, decided to change our lives for the worse. And I ended up spending my Fulbright year not in Ukraine, but in Germany, at the research institute for sustainability in Potsdam, near Berlin, next to Berlin. And this was a big change in my life. This was like a crash course in decarbonization, hydrogen, electrolyzers. Like many people dealing with Ukraine and with the former Soviet world, I was very much focused on traditional views of energy security, looking at supply and markets for natural gas, for oil, coal. But because of this sudden change, I suddenly had to deal with a whole community of hundreds of scholars who were totally devoted to working on sustainability and on decarbonization, and I had to learn very fast. So this has led to changing my project. I'm not going to work on the steel oligarchs now, maybe later. And I'm going to write a book on what I call the last frontier of decarbonization, hidden industrial carbon between geopolitics and climate change. And what do I mean by hidden industrial carbon? Well, basically, in this project, I pay attention not to the visible fossil fuels like we know, natural gas, oil, coal used for electricity production, or used for making fuel for cars or for ships, but those uses of fossil fuels that are used for other uses that are less obvious. I already knew about that from my work on the coal to steel chain in Ukraine because of coking coal and because of the use of coal in steel making. But now in this project, I really focus on that. And basically, these are fossil fuels that are used, or the use of fossil fuels for roles that are difficult to visualize and also difficult to electrify, difficult to move to electrification. Industrial roles, such as using these fossil fuels as feedstock, using these fossil fuels as reducing agent, or when you need some very high temperature processes industrially. These are very hard to replace processes right now, and they're very important. They're also very important in terms of emissions, about 15% of CO2 emissions. And I'm going to focus on this. And my case studies, if you could look at this, these types of fossil fuels are very important for making cement, for making plastics, also for producing paper, but also for producing steel and for producing fertilizers. And among this larger universe, I decided to focus on steel, which I already know from my work on Ukraine, and fertilizers, which I knew zero about. Why did I choose these sectors? Because they are globally traded, as opposed to, for example, cement. They have a statistically very significant use of fossil fuels, and they represent very complex issues, what in the literature is called wicked problems, where you have a good that is useful, even in the context of the good things it can do for humanity, or the good things it can do for decarbonization, but it's also very problematic in other ways. And I also wanted to choose as case studies sectors where Russia, Ukraine, and China would be significant players. Obviously, in terms of the size of the economy, Ukraine does not compare, in particular with China, but these are sectors where the disruptions created by Russia's all-out invasion of Ukraine and invasion of Ukraine in 2014 as well have created global disruptions which are significant. So these are the cases that I'm looking at, and in starting to work on fertilizers, it became clear that this is going to be very interesting. It's also something that has really received very little attention outside of agriculture studies. So those of you who are agriculture specialists, you probably know everything about fertilizers, but despite the fact that one important type of fertilizers, nitrogen fertilizers, is produced on the basis of fossil fuels, energy specialists never paid attention to them. And in particular, international relations professors never paid any attention to them. And I want to change that. So I'm going to focus on nitrogen fertilizers, which are the most used type of non-organic fertilizer. They represent a very contradictory role because, as you know, they have been essential for feeding the world population. If you look at this graph, you will see here that starting especially around 1960, the percentage of the world population that is being fed thanks to the green revolution related to nitrogen fertilizers has grown exponentially. So that's a very good role. But we also know that their continued use at the current level is very problematic because of the environmental problems related to eutrophication, related to the global nitrogen cycle, and so on. Yet at the same time, these nitrogen fertilizers are very much used as a weapon. And in a way, you could look at them as another side of the energy weapon that we have talked about so much in the past. What we can see is that the use of inorganic fertilizers, so here I'm including not only nitrogen fertilizers, but also potassium fertilizers and kalium fertilizers, and it has increased significantly, but this increase has not been equal throughout the world. It has it's different in different parts of the world. And when I started to work on nitrogen fertilizers, I spent a lot of time trying to look at statistics. Well, where is Ukraine in terms of exports? Because Ukraine until 2022 played an important role in nitrogen fertilizers exports. Where is Russia? And then I realized that China is a very, 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 very important player. And we could say that China is not hidden in hidden fossil fuels. China is controlling about 60% of global steel production, which is related to the use of coke as a hidden fossil fuel. China is controlling about 30% of global ammonia production, which is largely used to produce urea and other nitrogen fertilizers. And for the last 10 years, China has been top 2 exporter of nitrogen fertilizers. Every year is either Russia or China. It's kind of shifting. But what is amazing is that China is an unexpected superpower in fertilizer exports, and I will get to back in a moment. But now I would like to say a few words about some of the things we need to keep in mind when we think about the geopolitics of fertilizers. First, there has been an increase in use of inorganic fertilizers, but the dynamics of this use are geographically differentiated. There are some areas of the world where the increase has been much faster, in particular in Asia, for example. This is going to be important. Also, you have very differentiated dynamics in terms of dependency. And if you look here, you can see that for some areas, like for some countries like Brazil and Mexico, this dependency is very high, and moreover, it's a very high dependency on Russia and Belarus as well. But also, you have a very interesting picture concerning the supply dynamics. The supply dynamics for each type of the three main types of inorganic fertilizers is somewhat different. You have a market such as each market has different dynamics, but what you can see is that in both the nitrogen and the phosphorus markets, China is playing a very large role. That is also something that caught my attention. What are some of the things that we need to keep in mind when we think about the geopolitical aspects of fertilizers, or the possibilities for fertilizers being used for geopolitical goals, especially when we look at them from the perspective of energy and the work and the attention that people have paid to energy? We can say that they may be seen as broadly similar to oil because of the key role of processing, also in fertilizers. We can
Oh, Margarita, unfortunately, we can neither hear nor see you. It's something around with the connection. Oh, yeah, now we can.
Okay, sorry. So it is going to be very important also in terms of the interface with some geopolitical projects. If we look at, if we look at the case of China, the interface with the Belt and Road Initiative, for example, and also because of the very important role of infrastructural path dependencies, something we also know about from research on energy. We look, for example, at all the work that has been done, including by myself, on pipelines connecting Siberia with Central Russia, with Ukraine, with the European Union, but also we know about infrastructural path dependencies involving ammonia and later fertilizers, such as, for example, the Togliatti-Odessa ammonia pipeline. So a few words about China. I didn't know anything about China before I started working on this, but just looking at those statistics pushed me to pay attention to China. So I'm probably going to say some stupid things, but I think it's worthwhile paying attention. Attention to the problem, not to me. Again, in nitrogen and phosphorus fertilizers, China, top producer. If you take nitrogen and phosphorus, that gives China a combined role that is even larger than Russia's. Also, if you look at the change from 2006 to 2016, you see a much higher increase in China's role, in China's exports, compared to other key players, such as the Russian Federation. So a couple of additional things that are going to be very important as we think about China's role in fertilizers. So it is the only country in the world producing fertilizers, and here I'm talking about N fertilizers, nitrogen fertilizers, the only country in the world producing nitrogen fertilizers industrially on the basis of coal. Can you hear me? Yes, okay. Actually, 85% of its ammonia production, which later goes on to produce nitrogen fertilizer, uses coal. At the same time, its use of fertilizer is one of the highest in the world per hectare, per area of land. And the disconnect between the increase in food production and the increase in fertilizer use is gigantic. In the 20 years covered by this statistic, agricultural production increased 33%, and chemical fertilizer use increased 77%. Let's look again at how does this technical information interface with the possibility of using fertilizers as a weapon. So we know that there are three key inorganic fertilizers. So organic fertilizers, mainly manure, then inorganic fertilizers, P fertilizers, phosphate, K fertilizers, potassium, potash, nitrogen. And nitrogen is the one that is more prone to be used as a weapon, because even when plants need all these different nutrients and all these fertilizers, because of the requirements for plant nutrition, because of the way in which nitrogen helps the plant absorb the other nutrients, the demand for nitrogen fertilizers is much more inelastic. So whoever is exporting nitrogen fertilizer, whoever can supply nitrogen fertilizer, has a better possibility of using that for political power or for pressure. And if we look at what has happened with fertilizers from the Russian Federation, it's very interesting, because even when there were bans on the export of natural gas to the European Union, there was no ban on the export of nitrogen fertilizers to the European Union. The argument was that this could disrupt the market. Perhaps it also had to do with the fact that nitrogen fertilizers are a kind of hidden, invisible type of energy. But as a result, even when Russia's income from natural gas exports to the European Union plummeted, its income from the export of nitrogen fertilizers increased significantly in 2022, reaching 16.7 billion, which is a lot of money. In terms of geopolitics and how geopolitics interfaces with domestic politics, I think it's also very important to emphasize how the way in which fertilizer production takes place, and for example, the role of intermediate products such as ammonia, is very important, because it creates openings for what I call intermediate players, technical players, trade players, trading houses, intermediate players which may be tied in and benefit from a relationship with key exporters. And of course, I know about this from my work on natural gas and on energy, because I wrote a book about energy corruption. And I wrote a lot, and I know a lot about intermediary companies, all the prosucarineros, etc., etc. But what is interesting here is that in the same way as, for example, the Russian Federation relied and continues to rely on Western technology for producing natural gas and producing oil, especially from older fields, China depends heavily on Western technology for some of the coal gasification that is used for its nitrogen fertilizer production. I don't know when this will become relevant. I don't know when or if ever the issue of sanctions related to China will come into the picture. Obviously, some people say that what we have learned from the behavior of European business supporting de facto supporting the Russian Federation for many years should make us very cautious about our relationship with China. But this is just one important small detail that is important to keep in mind. All of these issues become even more complicated when we move to a world to what I call a world of taxing and replacing carbon. That is a world that is perhaps not decarbonizing fast enough, but a world that is shaped by the imperative of decarbonization. And here, it's very important to be very clear about the impact of nitrogen fertilizers and climate change. For many years, the rule of thumb about the impact of nitrogen fertilizers in global emissions was that it contributed 1%, but new calculations put this at more than 2% and increasing. Why it is increasing? It's increasing because in the last 20 years, there is a growing role of ammonia production based on coal, as opposed to ammonia production based on natural gas. And ammonia production based on coal has a 50% higher CO2 emissions profile than ammonia produced based on natural gas. This also raises issues having to do with how do you consider emissions at the upstream, that is at the production period, versus downstream emissions. For example, when you apply those fertilizers and they volatilize. It also interfaces with important discussions about some types of emissions, some types of greenhouse emissions that have also remained largely invisible. That is non-CO2 emissions. Emissions such as N2O, nitrous oxide, which actually is 265 times more warming of the atmosphere than CO2. The good news is that shifting nitrogen fertilizer production to a decarbonized basis is possible. And it's actually easier to do than shifting production in other sectors, such as steel. Why? Because if, for example, in the steel sector, you would need to use a totally different technology to move steel production to a hydrogen-based decarbonized basis, in the case of nitrogen fertilizer production, you can just change the way you produce ammonia and then plug and play, do it. But this in itself opens a lot of interesting issues and problematic issues. For example, having to do with the fact that China, which is already dominating nitrogen and potassium fertilizers, could also very easily dominate the production of nitrogen fertilizers based on green ammonia. This also opens a number of interesting domestic dynamics. If you look at this map, here we have, especially in the northeastern area, in blue, the coal-based ammonia plants existing in China. And here you have the areas that will be mostly developed, that would have the best conditions for developing green hydrogen. And these two areas do not coincide. So while on the one hand, we can be concerned about an even stronger Chinese dominance of nitrogen markets, which would be a challenge also for Ukraine. We know that there might be domestic implications in China. And here, when we are trying to understand the possibility of China also dominating the production of nitrogen fertilizers on the basis of green ammonia, in addition to steel, in addition to coal-based fertilizers, this is very interesting information. So if you look here at the prices for production, the current pricing is here, and China is well positioned there. If China were to produce on the basis of grid-based green electricity, it would have a clear advantage towards other producers. So if you see, the other producers would have all much higher prices. So this is something to keep in mind. Also, as we consider Ukraine's role in the global economy in the years to come. So what does this all tell us about choices facing Ukraine? I just want to share with you a couple of ideas, but I'm open to listening from you now or later. First, what I have learned about, first I want to clarify that obviously you cannot compare the Chinese economy and the Ukrainian economy. But until 2022, Ukraine did play an important role in nitrogen fertilizer exports, 12th, 13th role globally. So it opens the questions, what do we do concerning regional economies? How to create a working economy for reincorporated territories in Ukraine when they will have to be reincorporated to the rest of the country after having spent 10 years or 5 years or 1 year separate from the rest of the economy. How do you create or maintain demand for coal? Or do you want to? Because as I have been studying China, a lot of what they're doing, a lot of the reasons for producing those fertilizers on the basis of coal is because they want to maintain demand for coal. And then, how do the new geographies created by the need to move to green hydrogen and green ammonia, how are they going to interface with the need to support traditional coal areas? So this is a map of China, not of Ukraine, but how would this look in the case of Ukraine? Second type of issues has to do with technology and technology choices. And here, I want to simply flag that I have been doing a lot of research on the different technologies that China is using for producing ammonia and for producing nitrogen fertilizers from coal. And it's very interesting because they used to have a very bad, very problematic, environmentally very problematic technology, so-called fixed bed gasification, AFB. And they have been moving towards a better technology, a more efficient technology, entrained flow gasification, PEF, which is much better environmentally. However, because they have replaced so much of their very antiquated AFB technology with this newer but still coal-based technology, this is good. But when it would come the time to decide whether to move to significantly better technology from the environmental point of view, be it natural gas-based technology or be it decarbonized technology, you have a problem, what we call sunk costs. And the industrial part used in China, this new, more efficient coal-based technology is very young. The average age is 12 years. In Europe, it's about 40 years. It's actually the same we see with electricity generation in China. They have lots and lots of very new coal-based electricity generation. So this is kind of better, but it's going to make it harder to move to really clean technologies. And finally, this raises a lot of issues concerning the role in the global economy. The European Union is moving, it's already partially implementing carbon border adjustments, CBAM, whereby the embodied carbon in different imported goods will be taxed. This will apply to fertilizers, this will apply to steel, and Ukraine is likely to be very significantly impacted as well as China. So how do we deal with this? How does the reframing of the economy take shape under these conditions? And for Ukraine, we know that rebuilding may lead to a move to greener technology, One of the groups I'm working with in Germany is specifically working on this Green Deal Ukraine. But what does then this mean for the raw materials that will be used in the different technological paths? And how will this impact on carbon adjustment issues, where for Ukraine it's not only an issue of having to adapt to a world of border taxes on carbon, but also a world of being a EU candidate that has to transpose EU regulations into its national legislation. So this is kind of the main issues I wanted to share with you. I'm happy to hear any comments or any suggestions, or to talk about this in the future. Now I would like to shift to another related topic, which has a lot to do with what happened to me in 2022, when I had to forego the possibility of doing my Fulbright fellowship in Ukraine, and I was parachuted into the Research Institute for Sustainability in Potsdam, Germany. I am going back to this institute. We are starting, I'm going there with a fellowship. I'm always going back to the US, of course. We are starting a project on the geopolitics of fertilizers. I will be working there with some very good colleagues on this topic. And I want to share with you some opportunities for fellowships that are related to some of the work I have been doing in Germany. And I want to share with you 4 key opportunities that I want you to think about and that may be good for you. The first comes from the DAAD, the Deutscher Akademischer Austauschdienst, and it's the Green Hydrogen Fellowship. Now, I know that many of you are working in the energy and agricultural field. Remember, green hydrogen is totally related to agriculture studies, because green hydrogen is the way to produce nitrogen fertilizers without fossil fuel. So if you're interested in agriculture, if you're interested in fertilizers, you must be interested in green hydrogen. And if you're interested in sustainability in general, you should also be interested in fertilizers via hydrogen, because this, as I mentioned before, is the easiest field sector to decarbonize. So here the DAD has a very interesting set of fellowships for different levels, for MA students, for PhD students, for postdocs. And I want to emphasize, yes, they can be for engineers, for agricultural specialists, but they can also be for social scientists, or even cultural specialists in culture, because they're very interested in the issue of the social acceptance of green hydrogen. And obviously, will it be accepted? How society reacts to this? These are all issues that political scientists, sociologists, even literature scholars can deal with. So one of the deadlines for this is coming up, April 10th, but there's also other deadlines that are open for young PhDs and PhD students. So that's the first. The second set of fellowships that I want to talk about has to do directly with this institute, where I was parachuted in 2022 when I wanted to go to Ukraine, when I wanted to write a book about Ukrainian steel oligarchs, and I couldn't, and I was parachuted here. Even this building has a very interesting history. I will tell you about it some other time. And the uniqueness of this institute is that they take what they call transdisciplinarity very seriously, because all the research they do is based on academic research, on science, but they want it to be oriented towards action. They want to have implications for policy, but also for societal engagement. And the second uniqueness of this institute is that they have a lot of support for scholars. What does that mean? It means everything from having a fellow advisor who will help you and help me make contacts with people throughout all kinds of academic institutions in Germany, that they will help you organize workshops if you want to organize a workshop, that they will help you access organizations that will help you do the graphs for your articles or your books. So this is a level of support I have never had anywhere else. So this is very important. So 3 opportunities here that I want to share with you. And again, I want to remind you that I'm going to be here starting in June for about 1 year or 1 year and a half. And maybe we will meet there. So the first thing they have here is for artists. I don't know how many of you consider yourselves artists, but their understanding of artists is not only people in the visual arts, but it's also people in filmmaking, in dance, in theater, in literature, in music. And they're interested in reaching out to artists who have a significant portfolio and who are also reflecting on transitions to sustainable future. So if that's an area where you're working on, or somebody that you know is working on, this could be relevant for that. And again, this is the deadline for this is coming up in about 3 weeks. This second fellowship at RIFS that I would love to tell you about is the fellowship I will have. It's just the regular research fellowship. But it's not really regular because, as I mentioned, this is a very unique institute where you are very much integrated into a research group, where you get a lot of support. And when you apply, you also can apply for a research budget. So, for example, I applied for funding to do a workshop on rebuilding Ukraine with or without sustainability. And they will pay for that. And they will do many other opportunities. So the application for this is in August, so you have still time for do that. But most importantly, I want to let you know about this third fellowship at RIFS, which they specifically told me to share with you, with my Ukrainian colleagues and friends, is the Klaus Tepfer's fellowship. It's not intended for quote-unquote regular academics, but for academics and other individuals which have a significant policy-making experience or NGO experience, because the goal of this fellowship is really to join and bring together these 2 areas. And the first thing I want to clarify is that they understand that people who play these roles have a lot of responsibility, so they are willing to be flexible with your timing. And what is most amazing is that in addition to a fellowship, you have a dedicated person that will help you coordinate the additional activities related to NGOs or related to policymaking. And they have a huge budget that could be used for some of those activities. So when I look at this, I think, my God, this is incredible. The deadline for this is April 14th, 2024. I have to remind you, of course, that this institute is English speaking. So that's good. But it also means that you need to, if you're going to be there, you need to make sure that you're up to date in using English in an everyday basis. So for now, I want to say thank you. I want to thank all these organizations that have helped me move forward my research. And I look forward to connecting through your comments and the Q&A and later on. Thanks.
Oksana, you're muted.
Thank you. Yeah, Margarita, let's move on and change the channel. I mean, Margarita, now you're muted.
Yes, we're going to move to which channel? To the Ukrainian channel?
Yeah, and we will all be in one and the same channel.
Excellent.
So that.
Canadian.
гарно.
Окей. Отже, дорогі учасники,
Гаразд.
можна спочатку поставити питання українською?
Так,
Маргарита
можна.
сказала, щоб було українською, а раптом що Леся перекладе, і вже відповіді будуть перекладатися. Тож, чи є у вас запитання? Прошу, хто розпочне. I can see no questions is free now.
Добрий вечір.
Доброго вечора. Так.
Я розпочну.
Я не можу слухати.
В ході доповіді прозвучали якраз певні економічні загрози, да? З приводу якраз переходу на певні зелені альтернативні технології. От вельми цікаве питання, дуже часто чую, що воно піднімається з приводу якраз і управління відходами, і інші складові. От цікаво почути думку. Як ви вважаєте, чи може є такі дослідження, що дійсно яким чином це економічно позначиться? Наскільки це кризово буде для саме от України?
The change to green economy?
Ви маєте на увазі перехід до зеленої економіки, так?
Yes. I personally do not have this data personally, but I think from what I have learned from other cases, it all depends. How do you direct your investments and how your external partners will be supporting you. There is some research, for example, on what will be the costs of moving Ukraine's steel industry to a green basis or rebuilding it, because a lot of it has been destroyed. And this would require very significant investments. Some people say $60 billion, but this investment would be recouped in about 7 to 8 years. The question is that for that transition period, you need significant support, and that is kind of the key question. So this is not something that a country can do on itself. That is why there is already an instrument that exists on the part of the G7, on the part of the OECD, the so-called Just Transitions Partnership, which has not been implemented in Ukraine, but is being implemented concerning South Africa, is being implemented concerning Indonesia, two countries that were very dependent on coal. And the intent of this is to really give support for the very large one-on investments that are going to be needed to do that change. So it cannot be done alone. It can only be done with support of external partners.
Послідовний переклад, оскільки перейшли на послідовну роботу. У мене особисто немає відповідних даних, але ще я можу сказати із інших відомих кейсів. Все залежить від того, як проводиться український канал. Перекладачка говорить в українському каналі. Чи мене чутно?
Дякуємо, все дуже добре чутно.
То послідовний переклад, так?
Так, Лесь, продовжу. Тут просто була якийсь шум.
Окей, отже, все залежить від інвестицій і від роботи з інвестиціями, і від підтримки зовнішніх партнерів. Тобто, якщо ми, наприклад, подивимося на існуючі зараз дослідження, то досліджується те, скільки буде коштувати перехід української металургії на зелену основу, або, можливо, скільки буде коштувати загалом відбудувати металургійну промисловість України, оскільки дехто каже, що фактично вона на сьогодні знищена, і говорять про великі обсяги коштів наприклад, приблизно таких рамках, як 60 мільярдів доларів, але з іншого боку варто пам'ятати про те, що такі інвестиції будуть достатньо швидко повернуті, відшкодовані десь за 7-8 років. Але це все ж таки означає, що цей період переходу він потребуватиме значної фінансової підтримки. І це ключове питання, тому що зрозуміло, що країна не може зробити це сама по собі. Ну і тут варто згадати про інструменти фактично вже існуючі, такої фінансової підтримки партнерської, наприклад, існуючі в рамках Великої Сімки. це так зване справедливе партнерство заради переходу. Поки що цей інструмент не запроваджувався в Україні, але імплементувався успішно у Південній Африці та Індонезії, тобто в країнах, де промисловість суттєво залежить від вугілля, від використання вугілля. Тобто це можливо, але для цього потрібна підтримка, тобто підтримка, яка сприятиме, власне, у цьому переходу через інвестиції, шляхом застосування інвестицій.
Дякую, Леся. Чи є хтось ще, хто хоче поставити запитання? Прошу, можете просто вмикати мікрофон навіть без рук, якщо є ще запитання. Пане Вікторе, ні? Просто камеру вимкнули, питань немає.
Я із великим задоволенням прослухав, і дійсно має геополітичний характер доповідь, аналітична доповідь. І важливо буде, я просто хочу таку ремарку, що всім нам об'єднатися заради подальшої відбудови, тому що енергетика, металургія постраждала, це як така цепочка і аграрний, я опікуюся аграрним сектором, тому щодо добрив дуже впливає і на рентабельність виробництва, ви знаєте, так, в кінцевому результаті. І, як ви вірно, пані Маргарита зазначила, що то є стратегічний товар, не просто товар, а як навіть зброя в лапках. Тому просто така ремарка, без коментарів, тому що сидів, слухав, зачарований. Щиро дякую.
Пане Вікторе.
Можна я спитаю?
Sorry, Margarita, do you need a translation of that?
No. Дуже дякую, дуже дякую.
Прошу, пані Тетянко.
Пані Маргарита, скажіть, будь ласка, чи розглядаєте ви однією з причин війни, яка розпочалася, останнього етапу війни 22-го року, якраз боротьбу за енергоресурси?
Margarita, you're muted, and also do you need this translated?
No. It's Tatiana, yes? Thank you, Tatiana. It is a question I often am asked because I am an energy specialist and because I always want to say that energy is very important. I will make a pause so that the translator can translate, the interpreter can interpret, and then I will come back.
I guess it's better to translate, right, Lisa?
Дякую. Thanks for the pause. Це запитання, яке мені часто задають, тому що я спеціалістка з енергетичної сфери, і тому що я завжди кажу, що, власне, питання енергетики є дуже важливим.
Yes. So, of course, as an energy specialist, I would like to say that energy is very, very, very important. However, very, very important, however, it is absolutely clear to me, as a person who has been studying Ukraine for many years and Russia for many years, that the goal of this war is not the control of energy resources. The goal of this war is the destruction of Ukraine as a state. But even more, the goal of this war is the destruction of Ukraine as a nation. This, maybe they want to control, but the main goal is the desire to punish Ukraine for being Ukraine and to make sure that Ukraine doesn't exist even as a nation. That is my humble opinion.
Thank you.
Отже, як людина, яка є спеціалістом із загалом питань, які пов'язані з енергетикою та джерелами енергії, я завжди кажу, що це дуже важливо, але при цьому мені абсолютно чітко зрозуміло, як людині, яка впродовж довгих років вивчала Україну і також Росію в цьому контексті, що мета цієї війни – це не контроль за енергетичними ресурсами, радше метою війни є знищення України як держави. І навіть більше знищення України як нації, як народу. З приводу енергоносіїв, так, можливо, вони хочуть захопити над ними контроль, але головна мета війни, яка ведеться проти України, це покарати Україну за те, що вона є Україною, і переконатися, що вона не існуватиме, зробити все для того, щоб вона не існувала більше в майбутньому.
Thank you, Margaret.
Дякую, Маргарита. Леся? Немає більше питань? Вже всі втомлені надвечір. Okay, yeah, Margarita, I think that we have no questions, but I want to thank you on behalf of the Ukrainian Fulbright Circle and to say that we are waiting for you to come to Ukraine, not only the circle, but the Fulbright office. And I've mentioned that we talked about you a lot and only in a positive sense, of course. So yeah, we're looking forward to such an opportunity, and thank you for this lecture. It was a totally unexpected point of view. Even when I first read the topic, it was unbelievable, and now I understand how complicated all the issues you study are. And thanks not only to you, we want to express a gratitude to the US and its help to Ukraine, its constant help, and we hope that our partnership will continue. So thanks a lot for spending this day with us, and for us it's an evening, of course, late evenings.
Thank you very much. This is really amazing, and I want to thank one additional person that you may know or may not know. Her name is Emily Channel Justice.
Of course.
She's the head of the Temerly Contemporary Ukraine program. And actually, she was the inspiration for this talk because we are often studying together, or meaning that we are working together in the same room so that we can motivate each other. And every day we meet, she's doing something new because she's very good and efficient. But I'm very slow. And every time we meet, she tells me, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And I tell her, I am working on the Chinese fertilizers every day. And eventually I say, I have to find a connection between this and Ukraine and my tribe, my people. So thank you also to Emily and to the Fulbright Circle. I'm looking forward to continue to collaborate with you. And I would like to send you by email also the information about the fellowships, in case somebody would like to have it in some other form or through the slides.
Thank you. That would be very useful for our participants, and I will share the materials. We have special folder for it.
Excellent.
Do we need translation at this point?
I guess not. I will summarize the main points. Дорогі учасники, ми тут насправді домовилися, якщо коротко, про те, що Маргарита ще надійшла окрему інформацію про стипендії, про які вона згадувала в іншому форматі, і я додам до нашої папки, додам також презентацію пана Андріана, сьогодні отримала. І робимо, дякую, ви мужні, ви досиділи до пізнього вечора. Робимо невелику перерву до наступного тижня, я сподіваюся, принаймні маємо. Якщо все вдасться, то на наступному тижні якраз буде лекція від енергетика, який не є прихильником зеленої енергетики, але подивимося. А вже уточнюємо, цей тиждень з 22 по 26 квітня буде у нас завантаженішим. Там якраз буде панель з American Chamber of Commerce та з комерційною палатою. І десь так, на 23 попередньо, але вони ще підтверджують дату. І на 29-30 також у нас з американськими колегами вже стосовно технічного університету також будуть лекції. Словом, я буду вас інформувати мірою того, як дати з'являтимуться. Ми постійно на зв'язку, матеріали додам. Дуже дякую. І на цьому бажаю тихої ночі передусім. До зустрічі наступного, сподіваюся.
Я теж дякую.
На все добре, всього найкраще.
Дякую.
Дякую.
Thank you, Margarita. Bye.
Thank you so much. It was fun.
Nice day.
Wonderful.